Nirvana Prakarana, The Transcendence, Chapter 14, The Story of Bhringisha. Aged and experienced Margosas stand guard, spreading thick shades in the premises. The architect who had designed the campus had adapted his plan in such a way that no huge tree was touched. Even the roads were not straight. Consequently, the buildings are not visible from the highway that passes by the campus. Deer cross the roads and graze the grounds fearlessly. In this sense, it not only makes an ideal setting for the prestigious Indian Institute of Technology, but gives the right milieu for a research scholar. For a teenager, in his decisive years, IIT is the dream, closest to his heart. And why not? When one gets a total opportunity to learn and to exploit one's full potential, who can ever think of complaining? Added to these advantages, one gets openings for bright careers even before completing the course. But then, human mind is such that it discovers and even creates reasons to complain and grumble. Everything looks attractive and grand from a distance. Go closer to it and so even those in the IITs or other institutions have their problems, many of which are self-created. As Professor Ramamurthy sat in his room in the Department of Aeronautical Engineering, he tried analyzing his behavior. He did not know what had been happening to him in the recent past. For over a month, he had been losing temper, apparently for no reason, on his students as well as his colleagues. When he realized that they were avoiding him, he had started becoming irritable at home. His wife, whom he loved with all his heart, wanted to go home for a change, and his son too wanted to accompany her, in spite of the fact that he would miss his school. It had been 3 weeks since the trouble started. Presently, it struck him that during this period, in fact a week before that, he had started facing a peculiar problem. He could not concentrate on his work. Whenever he took up any work, he got distracted to such an extent that he would come back to it after the mind roamed around for a long interval of time. He had avoided even giving lectures, which was not only considered mandatory, but was thoroughly enjoyed by him as well. This dawned on him when he tried to read through a newly published paper in an international journal. Consequently, he realized that nothing seems to satisfy him. Food had become insipid, discussions boring, the evening walks in the campus monotonous. Luckily for him, he met a person who guided him in solving the problem by performance of simple asanas and pranayama. The problem faced by Ramamurthy is neither peculiar nor singular. It is a most common problem faced by one and all, one time or other in life. Mind is so restless that even the normal life gets disrupted. At such times, it is difficult, if not impossible, to resort to methods of vichara. When the enemy is invincible, the guerrilla warfare is resorted to. Similarly, when the mind is very strong and acts as an enemy, maybe in an imagined one, rishis have devised indirect methods to bring it under control. The existing literature on mind quietening methods is literally mind-boggling. However, if one understands the principle behind the methods and remembers their single aim of quietening the mental activity, it becomes very clear. Those who have great restlessness find indirect methods useful, and others who have comparatively calmer mind find the direct methods more useful. In the indirect methods, the mind is influenced by tackling other faculties like body through asanas, prana or vital force through pranayama, emotions through bhakti, and action through karma yoga. Most of the isms stress on the indirect methods, and only a few advocate the direct methods. In the direct methods, the mental activity is handled directly through dharana, dhyana, nididhyasana, etc. In spite of the fact that Yoga Vasishta is predominantly a Jnana Shastra, it does in many places throw light on the indirect methods as well, which are invaluable to a seeker. There are two approaches to this spiritual practice. The first is to just begin the practice without going into the theoretical details, in which case the practitioner may tend towards mechanicalness or empty gestures as it has in many of our so-called religious practices. Puja, Archana, Parayana or other devotional chantings of the sacred literature, Japa are some of the examples. If we were to assess religiosity of a person through the time he or she engages in such practices, then India is perhaps the most religious country, and we know it is not. This is due to the fact that most of us have been blindly following what our elders have been doing for centuries. Of course, added to the blind practices is the most dangerous justification that the sins committed get washed off through them. Consequently, there is no appreciable change in persons in spite of years of such practice. The other approach is to understand the mechanism of the practice, at the same time be aware of the ways and mechanism of the activities called mind and others which cause the disturbance. Even this approach is not foolproof in the sense that one may tend to be a theoretical yogi involving oneself in endless discussions and arguments. A little theory is definitely necessary, but the practice mandatory. Yoga Vasishta gives the necessary details of the mechanism of all activity in such lucid manner that one can take advantage of it to plunge deeper and deeper into oneself. In the last sarga, it was hinted that ahankara, the I-do-ness, is the cause of ignorance and misery. In the present sarga, how the ahankara and other activities consequent to it are to be quietened has been discussed. Sage Vasishta said that the universe manifests itself through Atma-jnana or self-awareness, like the illusion of a serpent arising out of a rope. To those contemplating on the rays of the sun as nothing other than the sun itself, the sun alone exists, but the rays and the sun are considered separate, then diversity appears. Sankalpa, or the initial contraction, produces restless motion on the tranquil Brahman. As soon as the Sankalpa is born, the restlessness expands and differentiates into the form world when it becomes Manas and begins to see itself through itself. The universe is nothing but the Sankalpa itself. It is neither real nor unreal. It manifests itself like dream creations. The seer, the hearer, speaker, feeler, smeller, walker and doer are not separate creations but one truth. All activity is in truth the stainless jnana. As the nature of Mahat or the cosmic consciousness is Brahman, there is no such thing as the independent universe. What is hinted at by Vasishta is that everything perceived or unperceived have a single cause, non-dual Brahman. It is like electricity. All applications can operate only through its power, and it remains hidden while its effects like the heat, sound, light and motion steal the show to the extent that we tend to become oblivious to it. Two similes are given to explain the mechanism of manifestation. The first is of the illusion of serpent arising from rope. The first is the illusion of serpent arising from rope. It is due to a wrong interpretation of this sense stimulus. The non-dual realities is misinterpreted as duality. The simile is that of a dream. The characters, the locale, and the reactions are creations of the dreamer, and the dreamer is real during the activity of dreaming, as evident from the palpitating heart, the excitement which sometimes continue even after the dream. But when the dreamer comes back to the wakeful state, he realizes that it was only his or her own mental projection. Ultimately, it is like the waves, foam, and the perpetual motion of the ocean. At this stage, a concept from the Sankalpa is being introduced. Purusha is the static aspect of the reality, and Prakriti the dynamic aspect. It is like the ocean and its faculty of waving. Out of Prakriti, the first manifestation is Mahat. Mahat is the first spandana, or the pure vibration without any attributes. From Mahat, Ahankara is born, and then all other manifestations. Vasishta continued, as all are aspects of Chit or consciousness, and the universes are nothing but Chinmatra or pure consciousness, there is nothing like Bandha or bondage and Moksha or liberation. One has to abandon all differentiations by observing Mauna or silence without a tinge of Ahankara. Performing actions without Ahankara, one can live as a great actor and enjoyer, yet as a renouncer of all. Rama requested to the master to throw more light on who is the great warrior actor, great enjoyer, and great renouncer. To explain it, Vasishta started narrating the story of Bhringisha. Bhringisha went to the summit of Mahameru and, having worshipped Parameshwara, sought his help to overcome the worldly delusion and to achieve lasting peace. When the Lord Shiva blessed him to become Mahakarta, the great actor, Mahabhokta, great enjoyer, and Mahatyagi, great renouncer, Bhringisha sought clarification of these terms. Parameshwara replied, he is the great actor who is indifferent to the fruits of action, free of pleasure and pain, dharma and adharma, and one who performs actions without any desire. He is the great actor who, being silent, is free from I or self-identification with objects and activity, who performs actions without fear or despondency and attachment for the fruits of action, but a witness to all, with all vision over all, with an equal vision over all. Such mind is undisturbed in all situations, birth or death, appearance or disappearance of objects. He is the great enjoyer who does not, through anger, long for or reject anything, but enjoys fully those things that come to him. He never loses his equilibrium of mind, even in the enjoyment of illusory pleasures and pain, productive of fear. He considers in the same light things or stimuli which lead one to dotage or death, regality or poverty, the virtuous or the vicious. He is the great and true renouncer who is intelligent to abandon dharma and adharma, pleasure and pain, birth and death, who does not have even an iota of desire or doubt. He is free of all duality and pairs of opposites, of all thoughts, and mental activity. Has eradicated all thoughts of visible things from his consciousness. Concluding the story, Vasishta blessed Rama to develop the vision as told by Parameshwara to Bhringisha and to protect the subjects. The reality alone is, and everything else in the plane of duality and pairs of opposites. The ahankara can be destroyed entirely by nishtha, the firm conviction that there is nothing foreign to that which is not affected by either sat, the existence, or asat, non-existence. One can free oneself of ahankara by developing antarmukhata or internalization and the harmonization of the external with the internal to remain unaffected by the pain of past actions. As usual, this grand scripture presents great truths to the seeker through apparently simple statements. The words Mahakarta, Mahabhokta, or Mahatyagi appear to suggest three different approaches to the same end: the annihilation of Ahankara. Ahankara manifests itself at three levels: Jnatritva, the knowership; Bhoktritva, the experiencership; and Kartritva, the doership. Mostly, we are aware of the Kartritva and Bhoktritva. At these two levels of the body and senses, the mental activity is quite intense and hence gross. Unless this activity is quietened, it is difficult even to become aware of the subtler activity like thoughts. All the spiritual literature tries to give methods for quietening the activity. Kartritva is characterized by identification with the external activity through karmendriyas or instruments of action and through the resultant fruits of action. In this sense, the motivation for any action is the desire for the fruit, and normally action is almost impossible without such motivation. From a common man who works for the resulting fruit, pleasure, security, or power and name, to a seeker who is seeking enlightenment, the action is motivated. Thus, it is very difficult to give up attachment to the fruits of action. The Bhagavad Gita has a shloka which is very, very popular. Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phalaheturbhuhu ma te sangostva karmani. The right to work only, but never to its fruit. Let not the fruit of action be your motive, nor let your attachment be to inaction. This shloka, while being one of the most famous and is also perhaps one of the most misunderstood ones, because if one gets detached to fruits of action, then the normal tendency is to avoid action altogether. This verse is a message for developing efficiency. It means that during the action, if one keeps dwelling on the result of action, obviously one gets distracted from the work itself and definitely brings down the efficiency. Keeping this in view, the verse warns us against being attached to inaction. In the very next verse, Lord Krishna takes a deeper level. Yogastha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya siddhya siddhyoho samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. Perform action, O Dhananjaya, abandoning attachment, being steadfast in yoga and balanced in success and failure. The evenness of mind is called yoga. It is possible to transcend the attachment to fruits and yet perform the action by being steadfast in yoga, which is clarified by Vasishta as being a witness to all activity. The Bhoktritva is at the level of experience through senses and mind. Even this activity is to be witnessed without any involvement whatsoever. When one is deeply involved with either action or experience, it is difficult, if not impossible, not to get disturbed, either negatively or even positively, by the outcome of such action or experience. The seekers are suggested to spend some time on the meditation seat to learn the aspect of non involved witnessing. Gradually, with continual practice, one is able to see objectively one's own action and experience as if the action or experience is happening at a distance and there is an entity I which is the witness. This is the second approach. The Jnatritva is the knowership, the I amness is the subtlest, which detaches oneself from all activity, is the watcher on the hill, one who is the witness. The term Tyagi used by Parameshwara suggests this. The greatest Tyagi or Mahatyagi is one who has transcended the memory of Tyaga. This perhaps is the toughest barrier in the seeker's journey. One gives up the attachment for grosser objects and objectives for the sake of the subtle. One gives up family ties, comfort, sense objects, etc. for the sake of life spiritual, but one keeps remembering what one has renounced. By introducing the word Mahat, which is the progenitor of Ahankara, the seeker is suggested to transcend this activity called I do-ness, or in other words, I renounce-ness. Mahat is Spandana, or pure activity without any attribute. A mantra from Kathopanishad sums up the whole process described in this sarga. Yached vang manasi pradnyah tad yached jnana atmani jnanam atmani mahati niyached tad yached shanta atmani. A person filled with prajna or awareness should merge the speech into the manas into the intelligent self. He should merge the intelligent self into Mahat, the Mahat into the tranquil self. Speech is the grossest and the Shanta Atman, the tranquil self, the subtlest. Adi Shankaracharya, in his commentary on the above mantra, clarifies the meaning of speech. Vagatropalakshanartha sarvendriyanam. Here, speech is meant to represent all the senses. Two wings required for the flight towards reality are asanga, the non-involvement, and antarmukhata, while the tail that gives direction to the flight is prajna or awareness. Asanga in the initial stage is towards the fruits of action. In the next stage, to the play of senses, and the last is to the process of asanga itself. Asanga is the companion throughout the pilgrimage. Sri Ramakrishna used to explain it with a very beautiful simile. First, rub your hands with oil and then break open the jackfruit, otherwise they'll be smeared with its sticky milk. First, secure the oil of divine love and then set your hands to the duties of the world. The oil can be of bhakti or of non-involvement. All our so-called troubles begin with involvement. The moment we learn the art of being involved, non-involved, antarmukhata ripens. Without asanga, even the antarmukhata is reduced to internal dialogue or even brooding. This advice is given by Parameshwara, the Lord of Yogis, to Bhringisha, to the Lord of Bumblebees. B represents senses and manas in the Vedantic symbology, because the senses and manas, the faculty of antakarana behind them, keep changing the objects like the bee changing the flowers. In this sense, this sarga describes the journey of the individual from the senses to the ultimate reality. For a child looking at the ocean in turmoil, the mighty waves, the froth, and apparent violence associated with the activity appear threatening. It is unable to appreciate the beauty as it sees every wave different from the other. But a mature person sees that the wave is nothing but the ocean waving, and the ocean nothing but a quietened wave. Sadhana consists of growing up to recognize the oneness of existence.